They thought I was just an old woman sitting quietly in the next room. They spoke freely, confidently, in a language they believed I could never understand. I stood frozen behind the door when I heard my son's wife laugh and say, "She won't see it coming." My heart shattered not because of what she planned, but because of who she was planning it against. Me, I never imagined my life would reach a point where silence became my loudest companion. After my husband passed away, the house echoed in ways that hurt more than grief itself. Every clock tick felt like a reminder that time was moving forward without him. I filled my days with routines, watering the plants, folding laundry that barely needed folding, cooking meals too large for one person. At night, when the loneliness crept in like a cold draft under the door, I turned on the television just to hear voices. That's how it started. Chinese dramas. At first, I didn't even know why I chose them. Maybe it was the unfamiliar rhythm of the language or the emotions that felt universal even without understanding the words. Love, betrayal, longing, they translated themselves. Subtitles became my companions. Then one evening, halfway through an episode, I realized I was reading less and listening more. Certain words repeated, certain tones carried meaning. Curiosity sparked something in me that had been asleep for years. I began pausing scenes, rewinding, writing sounds in a small notebook. It wasn't about mastering a language. It was about feeling alive again, about proving to myself that my mind hadn't aged just because my hair had. I never told anyone. Learning became my private rebellion against invisibility. When my son Daniel married Lily, I welcomed her with open arms. She was elegant, well-spoken, and carried herself with a confidence I admired. She called me Mom from the first day, her smile polite and controlled, like someone who had practiced it in front of a mirror. I noticed little things, how her eyes scanned the room when she entered, how her tone shifted when Daniel wasn't around, but I told myself I was imagining it. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law, the suspicious one, the lonely one who read too much into things. They moved into the house with me temporarily, or so Daniel said. Just until we find our own place, he promised. I agreed, grateful. For the company, happy to hear footsteps again. At first, dinners were warm, filled with conversation. Then, slowly, the space changed. My framed photos were moved. My chair at the table felt slightly pushed back each night. Small things, easy to dismiss. It's easier to blame on age. Lily began speaking Chinese on the phone more often. I heard her in the kitchen, on the balcony, in whispers behind closed doors. I never reacted. I never let my face change. I listened without listening until one afternoon. Everything shifted. I was walking down the hallway when I heard her voice sharpen. This wasn't casual conversation. It was anger, stripped of politeness. Stopped without meaning to. My heart recognized the danger before my mind did. "She's not as harmless as she looks," Lily said in Chinese. I felt the words hit me like a slap. Another voice answered through the speaker, her sister, calm and curious. "So, what are you going to do?" I should have walked away. I should have pretended I didn't understand. But my feet refused to move. "She watches me," Lily continued. "Acts kind, but it's her house. Her rules. I won't live like a guest forever." The hallway felt too narrow. The walls too close. "You're married to her son," the sister said. "That's enough." Lily laughed softly. Not when she's still breathing down my neck. My chest tightened. "I have a plan," Lily said. Slow, careful. A pause followed, heavy and deliberate. "She forgets things already," Lily continued. "I'll help that along." My hand flew to my mouth. "I'll move objects, hide things, confuse her. Then I'll tell Daniel she's been accusing me, yelling at me, old women snap. Everyone knows that." Wanted to scream. Instead, tears burned silently. "And if he doesn't believe you?" her sister asked. "He will," Lily replied. "But if not, there are doctors, papers, homes." Homes, the word echoed like a prison door slamming shut. I backed away slowly. my legs trembling. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at my hands. These hands that raised a son. These hands that held a dying husband. These hands she planned. To erase that night, I didn't confront her. I didn't cry in front of Daniel. I lay awake, replaying every strange moment I had dismissed. The missing pills, the misplaced keys. The way Lily watched me when I searched for things. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation, and she had no idea I understood every word. The next morning, I brewed tea like always. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. Lily walked in, cheerful, asking if I had seen her notebook. I looked at her and realized something surprising. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had burned itself out overnight, replaced by clarity. I smiled at her and answered in Chinese. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. The mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. For the first time since she entered my life, her mask fell completely. I wasn't invisible. Anymore, I was listening. She stared at me like she had just seen a ghost, her mouth opening and closing without sound. The silence between us felt heavier than any scream. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her words. Homes, papers, erasing me. What did you just say? Lily finally whispered, this time in English. As if switching languages might rewind the moment. I bent down slowly, picking up a piece of the broken mug. My hands were steady now. Calm has a strange way of arriving when fear has nowhere left to live, I said. I replied softly, in Chinese again, that you should be more careful with what you say when walls have ears. Her knees buckled and she grabbed the counter. For support. Daniel rushed in from the living room, startled by the crash. What happened? He asked, looking from the shattered mug to his wife's pale face. Lily spoke first. Your mother. She scared me. She suddenly started speaking. Nonsense. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. His eyes still held the boy I raised, but there was a distance now. A thin wall built from marriage, stress, and unspoken loyalty. Daniel, I said gently, do you have a moment later? It's just you and me. He nodded, confused. Of course. Lily shot me a warning glance. I pretended not to see. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. Lily avoided me completely, staying in the bedroom, pretending to be on calls. I heard her whispering urgently in Chinese, her voice trembling now, no longer confident. I caught fragments: panic, fear, denial. She knew the ground beneath her was no longer solid. That evening, Daniel came into my room and closed the door behind him. He sat on the edge of the bed. It's the same way he used to when he was a child and had done something wrong. Mom, he began carefully. Lily says you surprised her today. I smiled sadly. That's one way to put it. Did you really understand what she was saying earlier? He asked. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had dreaded and prepared for all at once. Yes, I said. I understood everything. He frowned. Since when do you speak Chinese? Since. Your father died, I replied, when the nights were too quiet. He absorbed that silently. Daniel, I continued, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen, not as a husband, not as someone trying to keep peace, but as my son. He nodded slowly. I told him about the hallway, about the voices, about the plan. I repeated her words as accurately as I could in both Chinese and English. I watched his face change with every sentence: confusion, disbelief, anger, pain. She wouldn't, he said weakly. She's been stressed. Do you know how hard it is for her adjusting? She said she would make me look unstable. I interrupted quietly. She said people believe anything about old women. Silence stretched between us. She moved my things. I went on. My medicine, my keys. I thought I was losing my mind, Daniel. I blamed myself. His hands curled into fists. Why didn't you tell me sooner? 'Cause I wasn't sure, I said. And because I didn't want to break your life with suspicion. But now I'm sure. He stood abruptly and began pacing. I need to talk to her. I already did, I replied. He stopped. What do you mean? I answered her in Chinese. She knows I understand. His face drained of color just like hers had. That night their bedroom door stayed closed. Voices rose and fell behind it. Crying, accusations, denials. I sat alone in the living room, hands folded, heart heavy but resolved. Whatever happened next, I would no longer shrink myself to survive it. The following days were unbearable. Lily acted fragile, tearful, clinging to Daniel whenever I was near. She apologized repeatedly, claiming she was joking, exaggerating, venting. She said cultural misunderstandings had twisted everything. She even suggested I had misunderstood her Chinese. That was when I decided I needed proof. I began carrying my phone with me everywhere. I turned on the voice recorder when I passed the kitchen, when I heard her speaking on the phone. When she thought she was alone, it didn't take long. One afternoon, she stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp again. She heard me. Lily hissed in Chinese. But I can still fix this. I'll cry harder. I'll say she's manipulating. Daniel, old women can be clever too. I recorded every word. That night, Daniel came home exhausted. I asked him to sit. I placed my phone on the table between us. Before you decide who to believe, I said, please listen. I pressed play. Lily's voice filled the room, stripped of innocence, dripping with calculation. Each sentence landed like a blow. Daniel's shoulders sagged as if something inside him collapsed completely. When the recording ended, he didn't speak for a long time. I didn't raise you to choose me over your wife, I said quietly. I raised you to choose truth. He covered his face with his hands. I don't know who she is, he whispered. That night, he asked her to leave. Not forever, he said, but until things were clear. Lily screamed. She cried. She accused me of poisoning him against her. She switched to Chinese one last time and spat words at me I won't repeat. I answered her calmly. In the same language, you planned my ending, I said. I chose my beginning. She packed her bags at dawn. The house fell silent again, but this time the silence felt earned. Daniel apologized every day for weeks. I told him healing doesn't run on schedules. Trust, once cracked, doesn't snap back into place. But something else had changed too. I started teaching him Chinese every evening. We sat at the table, repeating words, laughing at mistakes. Language became our bridge back to each other. For the first time in a long time, felt not just heard but respected. I don't know what the future holds for their marriage, but I only know this. I am no longer the quiet woman in the next room. I am listening, and I will never be erased again. The days after Lily left felt unreal, like the quiet after a storm when debris is still floating in the air. Daniel moved through the house like a man learning its shape for the first time. He noticed things he had never noticed before. Old photo of his father by the window, the chipped corner of the dining table, the way I always lined my shoes neatly by the door. Grief has a way of sharpening vision, and guilt sharpens it even more. Lily didn't disappear completely. She called constantly, long messages, missed calls at midnight. Tearful apologies mixed with sudden anger. Sometimes she spoke in English, sometimes in Chinese, as if switching languages might change reality itself. Daniel didn't answer most of the calls, but I could see how each vibration of his phone tightened his jaw. One evening, after dinner, he finally spoke the question he'd been carrying for days. "Mom," he said quietly, "why would she do that to you?" I looked at my hands for a long moment. Age gives you many answers, but it also teaches you which ones are. Hardest to say because I replied slowly. She saw me as an obstacle. He frowned. An obstacle to what? To control, I said. To certainty. To a life where nothing challenges her authority. He shook his head. But you were kind to her. You gave her space. You defended her. I smiled sadly. Kindness can threaten people who live in fear. When someone is always calculating, calm feels dangerous. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I keep thinking how close I came to believing her. That confession cut deeper than any of Lily's words ever had. You almost did, I said gently. And that's not a failure of love. It's the danger of trust without awareness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house breathe, the pipes, the floorboards, the faint hum of the refrigerator. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of what could have happened if I hadn't listened, if I hadn't learned, if I had stayed silent, the way women of my generation were taught to. Memory after memory surfaced. The way Lily would correct me in front of guests. The subtle sighs when I spoke too long. The way she always stood between Daniel and me during arguments, smiling sweetly while doing it. None of it seemed accidental anymore. The following week, Lily asked to meet. I just wanted talk, she told Daniel over the phone. All three of us, he hesitated, then looked at me. Only if you're okay with it. I considered the question carefully. Fear flickered, but it didn't stay. Yes, I said, it's time. We met at a small cafe halfway between the house and her sister's apartment. Neutral ground, public, safe. Lily arrived first, sitting stiffly with her hands folded around a cup of untouched tea. When she saw me, something unreadable passed over her face. Resentment, embarrassment, maybe even shame. She stood. She said softly. I nodded and took my seat. Daniel joined us moments later, tension radiating from his posture. Lily spoke first. I made mistakes, she began, voice trembling. I was overwhelmed. I felt like I didn't belong. I said things I didn't mean. I listened without interrupting. I never planned to hurt you, she continued, eyes flicking to me and away again. It was just words, anger. I leaned forward slightly. Words reveal intention, I said calmly, especially repeated ones. She swallowed. I panicked when you answered me in Chinese. I felt exposed. Yes, I replied. How it feels to be seen. Daniel cleared his throat. Lily, you talked about moving her medicine, about making her seem unstable. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't do anything, I swear. Thought about it. That's all. I met her gaze. Thinking about harming someone to protect your comfort is still a choice. Her shoulders sagged. There was a long silence. Cups clinked in the background. Kay waitress glanced at us and looked away. Finally, Lily spoke again, this time in Chinese. You ruined my life, Shay said bitterly. I answered in the same language, my voice steady. You tried to ruin mine first. Daniel stiffened. What did she say? She said I ruined her life. I translated, and you? He asked. I told her the truth. Lily stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly. You wanted control, she snapped in English. You enjoyed being the center. You didn't want to let go. Felt something settle inside me. Not anger, resolution. Raised my son, I said evenly. Letting go of him was never the problem. Losing myself was. She stared at me, speechless. Daniel stood as well. I think this conversation is over. Lily looked at him, desperate now. Daniel, please, we'll talk later, he said. But not today. She left without another word. As we walked out of the cafe, Daniel exhaled deeply, like he'd been holding his breath for months. I'm proud of you, he said suddenly. For what? I asked. For not breaking, he replied. For standing up. For surviving something I didn't even see. I smiled. We survived more than people realize. I didn't magically return to normal after that. Some nights I still woke up expecting to find something missing. Some mornings I still check my medicine twice. Trauma doesn't leave politely. It lingers, but something else lingered too: strength. I joined a language group at the community center. Older women like me, younger immigrants, curious retirees. We laughed at our accents. We shared stories. I realized how many of us had been underestimated our whole lives. One afternoon, a woman asked why I started learning Chinese so late in life. I thought for a moment, then said, because one day, I needed to understand what was being said about me. She nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. Daniel and I grew closer in ways we never had before. He asked about my marriage, about my regrets, about the things I'd never told him because I thought they didn't matter. We discovered each other as adults, not just mother and son. Months later, Daniel told me he and Lily were separating. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust her again, he admitted, and I don't want a life built on fear. I reached for his hand. Choosing peace is not failure, I said. It's wisdom. Sometimes late at night, I replay the moment in the kitchen, the look on Lily's face when she realized I understood, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. That moment marked the end of my silence. I didn't learn Chinese to protect myself, but it did, and it taught me something far more important than words. It taught me that listening can save your life.